time has come, the walrus said.
To talk of many things.
Of shoes and ships and sealing wax.
Of cabbages and kings.
And why the sea is boiling hot.
And why the sea is boiling hot.
Today, a few of us are here representing all children who are victims of war and violence. There is a common ground of suffering between all of us. I saw thousands die. 1 million children died. For the children, every day it was the same. The only sound was of threats, of anger, and of murder.
It's been said that there is no power on earth which can resist an idea whose time has come. But how does it come? And from where?
I came from Beatrice, Nebraska. It's a community of approximately 13,000 people, and it's a small farm community in southeast Nebraska.
I live in downtown area of Tokyo. My area is called Edogawa, and I am an organizer of a trade union which is based in that local area of Edogawa.
I live in Westerly, Rhode Island, and I am a trust officer in a bank in Westerly.
I live in the German Democratic Republic.
I'm from Atlanta. I'm a member of the Atlanta Printing and Specialist Paper Products Union, Local 527.
I am a member of Italian Parliament.
I'm from Altadena, California, which is a suburb of Los Angeles and Pasadena.
I'm directing a neighborhood health center in East Harlem.
I am a Buddhist Nichiren sect priest.
For 22 years, I have been the rabbi at Temple Israel of Northern Westchester in Croton-on-Hudson.
I live in New London, Connecticut. I live right across the river from where they build the Trident submarines.
And now the time has come, and they have come to speak of many things. From Bologna, Italy, and Beatrice, Nebraska, Edogawa, Japan, and East Harlem in New York City. A great ingathering of people, some to demonstrate, some to make a beginning, some to challenge, some non-violently to bear witness. But sharing a single idea, all governments must stop the madness of nuclear armament, the building of weapons so fast, so accurate, and so devastating that they invite a nuclear first strike.
Well, my family and my friends were concerned about my safety in New York, but they were all very excited about why I was coming, and my father surprisingly said to me, I hope what you're doing is something that they will listen to. They, meaning the United States government and the USSR government. There is a growing concern in Beatrice, Nebraska. Beatrice is part of the grassroots movement, and people like myself who've been doing work there, talks, petition gathering, that sort of thing, we've been surprised at the response we've gotten. I think when I come here, it means a lot of other people are here also, and people are going to listen.
As a religious leader in Hopi land, I hope to bring this message to the World Assembly here in the United Nations. Our prayer is always that all of us, brothers and sisters, will remember our Mother Earth, who is in pain.
I guess basically I have to be an optimist from the point of view of my religious faith. I think Quakers are basically optimistic about the universe because we feel that the universe is intended to be peaceful. Well, what's happened in the last year and a half, 2 years, with the growing freeze movement and the peace movement has been terribly exciting and very, very encouraging. A lot of long, slow, nitty-gritty, unrewarding work is finally in the open, and that's very exciting and very gratifying.
A member of the religious society of Friends in GDR. In this society, I am responsible for the peace walk. By profession, I am physicist. I'm not working only with Quakers, but also with other Christians, and also with colleagues, for instance, in my factory. And their hopes are very strong in the direction of disarmament, especially nuclear disarmament.
I was in New York City with a group of people that was to block the entrance to the embassy. I was there as others were there because we believe that we're past the time when life can go on as usual. And so we were blockading the embassies of the major nuclear powers. And when we were arrested, the arresting officer took us onto a bus, and when we sat down the bus, told us, you know, I should be out there. After we were booked in at the precinct house at 130-something Street, we thanked the arresting officer and the booking officer, and he turned to us and said, you know, I should thank you. I've got children.
There are two concrete things to look at when we are asking the question about how the arms race today impacts on women in this country. One is the question of jobs and employment. There's clear evidence that increased military spending, which comes from the escalating arms race, affects jobs for everybody in a negative way, but the impact on women is even greater. Well, the second way is in the cutbacks in social spending and government spending for social programs. Women have a much greater relationship to things like daycare programs, the education system, healthcare facilities and healthcare programs, and the cutbacks in all those programs mean that women have to find new ways to take care of their families, to shoulder that responsibility as individuals as opposed to part of a community or a social structure that deals with those concerns.
I think that many women have felt before that all this about warheads, missiles, armaments, economy, military budgets is something which is very complicated, very technological, and anyhow we don't have any influence in this area. So many women have thought, I don't want to think of these things, they're too horrible, they're too ghastly. Now they have found out that if we don't act now, go together, maybe in women's groups, maybe as I do in mixed organizations, because I also think it's very important that men and women work together.
Represent all the peoples of the world. We will all plant a tree as a sign of hope for the future, for our children. We come from the West. We bring our soil, California, Iowa, Kansas, Reading, Pennsylvania, 3 Mile Island. We come from the South, and we bring the soil of Atlanta and Decatur, Georgia. We bring soil from Garri, an island off the coast of Senegal, where slaves were kept before being brought to America.
The time has come, the walrus said, to talk of many things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax, of cabbages and kings, and why the sea is boiling hot.
When we started, we had a contingent that was probably like 1,000 strong, but as we were marching down the streets and we were communicating to people what we were protesting all about, people joined, and afterwards about 20 or 50 blocks, when we looked down, we had probably 4,000 to 5,000 people who had joining our demonstration, and they were very happy, and they were very sympathetic and very involved in our demonstration. I was born in Ay Bonito, Puerto Rico, a small town in Puerto Rico and in the mountains, and I'm an elected organizer for District 1199 of the National Union of Hospital and Healthcare Workers. My function basically is to represent members in collective bargaining and at the same time to organize new members into our union. Close to $2 billion have been cut in Medicaid and about $2 more billion in Medicare, and this directly affects the reimbursement rates for the hospitals, nursing homes and clinics that we represent. So as a result of the cuts, we are really losing a lot of members. So we are joining with all other forces that would like to fight back.
In Atlanta, I'm involved in the Jobs with Peace movement. We're trying to get a referendum passed in Atlanta through the City Council. It's a nuclear-free Job with Peace referendum. It will help labor, and at the same time, it will deal with the nuclear issue.
The unfinished agenda of black liberation has been one of achieving full civil equality. And it has become increasingly clear that the escalation of the military budget to the level that it is clearly a national priority, especially for this administration, means that that limits the ability of the deprived communities to have access to the resources that they need. We cannot spend $1.6 trillion over the next 5 years and have any other effect except the further deterioration of the condition of working people. And of course, black people in the first place are working people.
I think it's very important for the federal spending to be brought under control, and that includes defense spending as well. Federal spending on weapons is causing serious dislocations, and it's contributing to the high interest rates that we're having in the country. It's throwing millions of people out of work, and it's a waste. It's a waste that we can't afford. We need to allocate those resources to other places where they can be of more productive use to us.
I am a Puerto Rican, I am a woman, I live in El Barrio, I serve in El Barrio, and I think all those things make me concerned about the peace movement. We now look at ourselves and say, okay, we're here, we have a right to vote, and if there is to be no revolution with arms, there has to be a revolution with the vote. And we're determined to bring that back to the people and make them see that connection. It's our money, it's not theirs. And we want to make sure Washington hears that.
Most of the Japanese workers today are the survivors of the war, and in that sense Japanese labor nowadays have a very deep consciousness for the peace movement. Japanese government is trying to build up arms in order to protect the sea lane on the Pacific Ocean, and also the Japanese government is planning to dump nuclear waste from the nuclear power reactors in a country to the Pacific. So we have this objective to protect the interest of the small island people in the Pacific Ocean, and we are going to demonstrate in support of the nuclear Pacific movement.
Well, I think the synthesis that has occurred between human needs, the human need to survive, in fact, and human need for justice, means that the foundation for one of the largest human needs movements in the history of our country has now been laid. Something like 120 national organizations that participated in coalition to produce June 12th. There were more than 500 cities that were organized, where there was organized activity for people to come to New York.
Bishop Matthiasson, he is one of the Catholic bishops who are now very engaged in the nuclear weapons issue. He is a person who asked the workers from the Pantex factory in Amarillo to leave their jobs because this Pantex factory is a final assembly of all nuclear warheads produced in the United States. And he founded a fund to help those of the workers who go to leave this factory.
The critical point, I think, is that it is possible to not just put people out of work, but to change the nature of the work that they're doing. And that the bottom line of that has to be that we have to look for work that is socially useful, that is not dead end in terms of it. All it really does is create new stockpiles of weapons that we hope will never be used.
In the spring of 1982, the American Friends Service Committee and clergy and laity concerned joined to bring to the United States 10 representatives of the European peace movement. For 3 weeks, they moved tirelessly around the nation, explaining to unprecedented numbers of people why Europe was resisting the deployment of new nuclear weapons. The European peace movement is now demanding a nuclear-free Europe, East and West.
One of the issues which has really helped to stimulate the new peace movement in Europe has been the language of fighting and winning nuclear wars in Europe. The President even talked about a demonstrative nuclear shot in Europe. And that has really shocked people to realize that we're going to be a battleground. That's the implication of all this.
There isn't no such a thing as limited or winnable nuclear war. And in case of the next war, which will be a nuclear one, the survival of all mankind, included the Americans one, are at stake. Maybe it happens 5 minutes later here than on the European continent.
10 days ago, when the Europeans came to Washington at the end of their tour, they met with the nation's press.
The 12th of December 1979, that was a date when NATO decided to deploy 572 cruise and Pershing II in Europe.
But it was only after the decision of NATO to enter this new phase in the arms race that the movement in Europe became big. We demonstrated in Amsterdam with 400,000, in Bonn with 300,000, in London with 250,000. When we were demonstrating, we were not demonstrating against the United States, we were demonstrating against our own government, asking them to take responsibility for this issue.
If ultra-accurate Pershing II and cruise missiles bearing nuclear warheads are deployed, they could strike Soviet missile sites in 6 minutes. In tandem with other new missiles, the arms race would move from using the threat of nuclear response as a defensive deterrent to war to the hair-trigger use of nuclear missiles as first-strike weapons. The risk of nuclear war by accident or miscalculation would be enormous.
President Kennedy was right in 1962 that he did not accept missiles in Cuba targeted at the United States. You have the same thing in reverse.
We are frightened by the build-up of European missiles in Central Europe. This we think it would be very dangerous for our situation in Europe.
In the summer of 1982, representatives of the Euro-Peace movement carried their demands for nuclear disarmament to the very streets of Moscow in the Soviet Union. They knew that the time had come to speak for sanity in the East as well as the West.
We have to go together. We have to stop this madness before it's too late. And I mean, we are really in a hurry. It's next year these missiles are going to be deployed if we don't stop it.
And of course, proliferation is the name of the game. Britain, France, China, Israel, India, South Africa, Argentina, who knows who is in what position on the nuclear ladder.
Before returning to their homes, the Europeans visited the U.S. State Department. They argued that people in communist and non-communist countries, with and without the consent of their governments, are demanding nuclear disarmament.
In the beginning of February '82, it was the day of the anniversary of the bombardment of Dresden during the last war. There has been a meeting of 6,000 young people in the Church of the Cross in Dresden, and they came with mottos, "Make peace without weapons" and "Swords to plowshares." And they had a very free and open discussion about all questions of peace and war, and their responsibility in their society in Eastern Germany.
300,000 demonstrated in Bonn against atomic weapons. I think they were really demonstrating so that these crazy missiles won't fall on our heads. Shouldn't we, once and for all, also start to count our missiles too?
We've been to the Soviet Union, we've been to the GDR, there's someone going to Hungary shortly. The kind of things we say to them is that they too must realize that the overkill level of the world is completely insane. They can destroy America 10 times over with what they've got, so they are also totally irrational, even though they blame the Americans for the technological advances of the arms race. So we say to them, you could make cuts. You could make independent initiatives which wouldn't damage your most military idea of security. You could, and you ought to.
I'm 12 years old. My father was Orville Kelly. My father learned in 1973 that he had cancer because of exposure to radiation from 22 atomic bomb tests. He became depressed. I was too young at the time to be told my father had cancer. But when I found out, I was very sad because I knew that someday my dad would die. I love my father. When I think of all the things we did together as a family, I find myself missing them. The barbecues on our back porch, all the fishing trips we used to take, and just the good times we used to have. All I have now are the memories.
The time has come, the walrus said,
to talk of many things.
Of shoes and ships and sealing wax.
Of cabbages and kings.
And why the sea is boiling hot.
The thing that I've been feeling since I've been here, the peace rally last Sunday in Pasadena, the march that I was a part of yesterday, the feeling of unity, that the spirit really is working within us. And we need to claim that spirit and claim the power that is ours.
I have been a religious activist all my life. I have felt compelled to act out the religious principles which I learned at home and in the synagogue and which I learned from my parents. The Jewish role models in the Bible and in my own life have been people who spoke the truth as they saw it. I love the Quaker expression, speak truth to power. This expression is the Quakers describing what the Hebrew prophets did.
There are three main reasons why all the citizens of Austin should be concerned about the ever-growing Bergstrom military base. These are, number one, noise, number two, air traffic congestion, and number three, air pollution.
The organization in the many cities that is going on, and the fact that we've now begun an outreach from the peace movement into the tenants organizations and the consumer groups and the environmental groups, all of this represents real strength and a real groundswell.
We are very involved in offering services to a community that needs them very badly. And we finally understand and see the connection between the monies poured into bombs and destructive factors and elements versus not having a health center on 120th and 3rd Avenue.
The women's movement would like to see us tackle head-on the problems of militarism and using violence and armed forces as the way to resolve conflicts between peoples, between nations. We can't rely on the ways that men have always resolved problems, and that is you get the biggest club and you hit it over somebody else's head. That's not going to work in today's world.
Well, I've always been interested in peace, and I think there's nothing more important in the world to do right now than this. In World War II, I slept in soggy foxholes with the bullets flying overhead in Okinawa. This is much, much easier to do. That was for the cause of war. This is for the cause of peace.
I think that the 80s, it will be a very, very decisive decennium. I mean, I think this is a decennium where it will be decided whether it will end in a nuclear holocaust or whether we will, together in Europe, in the United States, in Japan, in the Pacific, where you also have movements, go together on an international level, because this is a global threat, and succeed in preventing this terrible thing which threatens us all.
The time has come.
The time has come.
The time has come.
The time has come.
People like myself can make a difference, and I truly believe that.